Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. And then the Jews began to complain about him because he said, I am the bread that came down from heaven. They were saying, is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, I have come down from heaven? And Jesus answered them, do not complain among yourselves. No one can come to me unless drawn by the Father who sent me, and I will raise that person up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh.
I'd like to invite us again into prayer for just a moment. Bread of life, we do turn to you this day, seeking that nourishment, that nurturing, that sustenance that we need to live our lives day by day. We listen to the words of the gospel writer John, and we reflect upon perhaps our hunger as well as the ways in which we are fed. Give us the direction, the guidance, and even the courage to seek out that good bread that is you. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Even outside, I take a drink before you. Well, it used to be there were three things you avoided talking about in polite society, polite company. Weather, politics, and religion. Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Remember the days of civility? I guess weather was considered maybe too trivial, politics too divisive, and religion was nobody's damn business. Nowadays, though, if you want to be really efficient and hit all three at once, just launch into a conversation about climate change. But if you think topics like that are hot, there's another area where passions run high in contemporary life, and that is our feelings about our food. We have strong opinions about all sorts of issues, but there's something especially personal about what we eat. And if it's true that we are what we eat, then maybe deep down we believe that what we eat shapes who we are, and we don't really want anyone talking about what we eat or differing from us. Anyway, if you happen to doubt that beliefs can be strong about this issue of food, just try posting your conviction on Facebook or some other social media and stand back, because religious wars were never so fierce. And I guess there is probably a lot that fuels the intensity of our feeling about food. Food is tied to our body image, to our health, our ethnic background in many cases, and even our political bent. So it stands to reason that we put a lot of stock in what we eat. Just for sheer entertainment value, I figured I'd throw in a couple of recent diets. A couple of American diets. For example, there's one called the cabbage soup diet, which it turns out is very low in calories, but also very low in fat, protein, nutrients, and fiber. These are, I think, real deals. Then there's the baby food diet, consisting of 14 jars of baby food every day, followed by a grown-up meal at the end of the day. The unfortunate side effect is you have a tendency to shop online for Fisher-Price toys. And then, that wasn't that one. And finally, there's the lemonade diet, and that's 6 to 10 glasses of lemonade a day, made with lemons, maple syrup, and cayenne pepper. I know, there's a kick. With a glass of salt water in the morning and a laxative at night. People swear by these diets, and people swear at these diets. But generally, and is often the case, indifference is not what people feel about what they eat. Well, people had their feelings about food in Jesus' day too. In fact, the Jewish faith had very detailed and elaborate and sometimes very rigid laws about what and when and how foods could be eaten. So Jesus, kind of like the unwary visitor to Facebook, was stepping into a firestorm when he opened his mouth about eating. Well, it's one thing to hear someone advocate a particular diet. I mean, for example, the high bread diet. Here's another example.
I like.
One woman is championing a woman whose last name is Baker. But it's another thing to claim what Jesus did, and that was that I am the bread of life. Ingest me, and I will give you abundant, eternal life. That's quite another claim, and even Danny Wegman doesn't do that. I am the living bread that came down from heaven, he says. And it can sound pretty weird, but maybe also a little enticing. Sort of spirituality of nourishment. It brought to my mind anyway kind of an Indiana Jones type movie where he's on some kind of quest for the Holy Grain that will confer eternal life. And there may be a sequel there, I don't know. He may be too old, but it would certainly be sponsored by Pepperidge Farm or Panera. But by the way, if you do undertake that kind of quest for the Holy Grain, I want to offer a suggestion that you head west over to Geneseo Way to the Abbey on the Genesee. I don't know if monk's bread confers eternal life, but when you walk into the main building of that monastery, the smell is to die for. And I don't know how many converts they get to Catholicism through that, but we ought to give it a shot. But maybe the claim of Jesus isn't all that weird if we think sort of more broadly in terms of the ways that we are fed. I love food. I partake of it on a regular basis. But there is stuff even more nutritious to the spirit, more animating to the soul than food, even the fanciest loaf of bread. And I call it communion. And I don't mean the kind of communion we celebrate in worship, although I think that is an effort to symbolize what I'm talking about. But communion is a deep connection, a connection of the heart that I think all of us enjoy at various points in our lives. Maybe even in a given, maybe even today, hopefully so. I think about people who fall in love. Maybe you can remember how long you could go without eating when you were feasting on a blossoming romance. For a time, even the finest food in the world was secondary as you drank in your beloved. Or it may have been a very different time in our lives, a time when we may have sat beside a waterfall, or on a mountaintop, or gazing at a sunset or a rainbow, or sitting out here in this park on a gorgeous day. It can be almost more than the body can take in. Nourishing, filling, fulfilling, in a way that perhaps no food could do. These, in my mind anyway, are moments of communion. Moments when it would seem to me that the bread of life is being imparted to us in deep ways. And we need to be fed like that. And I believe personally that it's the living Christ that does that. In America, we're never far from food. And we can get it very quickly. You can pull your car up to a window and you can get anything from a bacon Gouda sandwich to a chicken snap wrap. But for all our abundant window food, I've yet to encounter, first of all, a drive-up bakery where you can just drive up and get a hot loaf of bread. Now, somewhere, probably in California, they have that, but thank God they don't have it here. And I've never been bold enough to drive up to Burger King and say, I'd just like a bun. Because even in spite of that old jingle, you know, what was it? It was, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, special orders, don't upset us. Or was that McDonald's? Anyway, I think it would upset them. And it would really be out of place, because that's not where you go to find that kind of bread. It's certainly not the bread of life. Some foods and some pursuits are just nutritionally empty, spiritually, nutritionally empty. And I think it's important for us to know where those are and go elsewhere. Tom will relate to this. I'm going to drag you back to the days of Roseland, operating the merry-go-round. Less than 20 feet away for 10 hours every time was a cotton candy machine. And that's about all you had to do, other than perfect how you jumped on and off, was just stare at the person making the cotton candy machine each time it came around. And the stuff was incredibly sweet. You could smell it on the merry-go-round. But you could probably eat a bale and a half of it and not get the nutrition of a carrot. I just raised that example as sort of as a cautionary note about pursuing what really does feed us and nourishes us. We need to be discerning as to what feeds us. And I think every once in a while, hopefully, maybe on a regular basis, we all experience a great meal, a great communion. Something that maybe raises the bar a little bit for what it is to really be fed. For example, just a real homespun, regular old example. You're talking with somebody about the weather, but then you turn a corner, and then you begin talking to them and listening to them about something deeply important in their heart. Maybe it's a challenge, maybe it's a joy, something about their life story. You don't want to go back talking about the weather. You might as well go get the cotton candy. One taste of the bread of life, and you don't want anything else, I think. So we do well to be discerning about what we take into our stomachs and what we take into our souls. And I think, if nothing else, this passage from John is an invitation to insist on the good stuff, to seek it out. So I want to end with a bit of gratuitous food humor. There's an expression that goes, we hear that smoking will kill you, and we hear that bacon will kill you, but smoking bacon will cure it. I don't know whether we have any bacon waiting for us out here today, but I hope that whatever it is that's on the menu, that true communion, joining of our hearts, will be part of the feast together. So may we all be filled with the bread of life. Bon appetit.